question I get asked a lot is why do I only keep nano-sized tanks? I've got two aquariums here, and I've got a third nano tank over here. So with a collective 70 gallons, why don't I just set up a 70-gallon tank? And I never really thought about it until I started posting content and everyone brought it up. I have had a few aquariums in the past that were around the 55 to 70 gallon range, but most of my aquariums have been anywhere between 2 to about 40 gallons, give or take. I had a 37 gallon or 36 gallon, 39 gallon Peninsula, whatever the Fiji Cube. Oh, it's the 38. I had the Fiji Cube 38 Peninsula. That was probably like my biggest nano size tank, if you want to consider that a nano. But most of my tanks are around the 20, 30 gallon range. So here's why I kind of prefer nano tanks over larger tanks, or at least why I keep them right now versus having one big one. So the biggest reason is because I live in a pretty small space, and not that a 60 or 70 gallon tank would take up too much space. I could probably try to figure it out, put one maybe in my living room. But before I moved out of my parents' house, the aquariums were always in my bedroom. So I only had a limited amount of space to actually put a tank. And I did fit a 55 gallon in my room at one point, but it took up a lot of my room. And honestly, having an aquarium kind of that size on the second floor, in my opinion, is a little scary. Now that I am out on my own, living in my own apartment, I am still on the second floor. And so having anything over like 40 gallons is just a little scary to me. And I do rent my apartment, so, obviously that gives another factor. If something were to break, that's a lot of water that is going to go on the floor. So, not that, a 30 gallon breaking would be any better, but I have a little bit more peace of mind with a tank that's not as large. So, the biggest one being space and not having quite the room that I want yet to set up a large aquarium. But then the other part of that is living on the second floor of my apartment. I also don't want to set up a large tank. Now, kind of on the same topic of being on the second floor slash in an apartment that's rented and worried about water getting on the floor, with a larger aquarium or something that's closer to my dream tank in size, I would want it to be sumped. And I've had issues in the past with bulkheads leaking or plumbing just not being correctly done. And not that it springs a leak, but I've had it where the bulkheads have leaked when I water tested the tank. And I just don't want to deal with any of that right now. I don't have a space to actually leak test an aquarium. And if something were to happen with a sump or the plumbing, that's just another kind of hurdle or issue that I'd have to deal with aside from having a large aquarium on the second floor. So the weight itself is an issue, but then also the possibility of the aquarium leaking from a bulkhead or any of the plumbing. So when I do get that big tank, if it's 90 plus gallons, I obviously want a sump set up. Now, Innovative Marine, one of, if not my favorite brand or tank manufacturer, they do make the SR series, which they make a 60, an 80, and a 120 as an all-in-one. So I think that would be cool, but anything that's above probably that 90 to 120 gallon range, I would want a sump. So we're not quite there yet. So that's kind of another reason of why I stick to these nanos. Now, the next reason of why I keep nanos kind of goes back to when I started keeping aquariums. I've always had a nano laying around. When I have had these larger tanks like the 55, the 65, and the 70, I obviously went out to look for a large aquarium and in time ended up breaking it down. But these nano aquariums I usually keep around just because once you buy them, it's really hard to get the money back that you spent on them, like kind of with anything in this hobby. But for that, I've had nano tanks just kind of laying around. So anytime I want to set up a new tank or have an idea for a new setup, I usually have the aquarium already on hand, ready to go. So I guess my point is going out and buying a whole new setup like an 80 gallon or 100 gallon, it's going to be a whole thing. I got to plan for it, obviously got to budget for it and save. But if I want to set up something new and kind of switch around the tanks, I usually will have a 20 or a 10 or a 15 gallon kind of laying around. And if I don't, then I can usually go out and find one for pretty cheap, around $100 to set up a new tank. So kind of an interesting point I'm trying to make there, but the fact that I have extra tanks laying around, it's just easier to kind of set up something that's already in your hand rather than trying to plan and go out and buy a new tank. Another reason that I kind of stick to these nano tanks is for this exact reason, being able to have different pockets of little reef tanks. So making content is part of it. Obviously, I'm in the hobby because of the coral and the fish, but I also do love making content and trying to inspire and somewhat educate you guys through these videos for as much as I know about the hobby. But it's nice having different aquariums that I can film, and obviously different aquariums that I can look at throughout the day. So it's nice having little pockets of different ecosystems throughout the house. Even though they're all in my room right now, I would love to get an aquarium out in the living room, and possibly even the dining room. But it's nice having, a tank that's dedicated to softies like this one here. The 30-gallon behind me is going to be dedicated to SPS and LPS. I also have my mangrove tank, which is set up solely for the mangroves, and it seems like it irritates a couple of people on the internet because they're like, why would you have an empty tank just for these plants? But I love having the different looks of the aquariums. You're able to kind of do some interesting scapes, and it's a really intimate tank as well. So you can get up close and personal with the tanks and really see what's going on inside of them. And like I said, having different fish and corals in each tank is really interesting. And the last reason is, since I am not in a permanent house, I'm still renting in an apartment, I do move quite a bit. So it seems like for the past few years, it's been every couple of years I've been moving, which 2 years kind of sounds like a lot of time, but when you have aquariums like this and you get to a certain point after year one, you only have a year to go, it kind of gets annoying over time moving tanks. So having aquariums this size is pretty easy to move. A 20-gallon would be much easier than, say, this 30-gallon. A 20-gallon I can pretty much pick up on my own when it's empty and move it, whereas this 30-gallon I do need two people so I don't break it. But breaking down and moving these tanks is so much easier than moving like an 80 or 90-gallon tank with a sump and everything. This tank right here, I can pretty much drain into a few buckets, put all the rock, coral, and fish in there, keep the sand with about an inch of water in there, and move it with my brother and I in a couple of hours. So this tank right here on the left, the 6-gallon, this is super easy because I can pretty much drain the whole thing and just be really careful with the mangroves and move it. But keeping these nano tanks, it's really easy to move around. Until we get to a more permanent place, I will get a larger aquarium that I feel like I will be at that spot for a few years. But for right now, we're sticking to the nanos because they are easy to move. And that is all I've got for you guys today. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys prefer nano tanks or larger aquariums. Right now, I say I prefer nanos. I've kept them for like the past 10 years. But personally, I'm very excited to get my feet wet in a larger tank. Sometimes it does sound nice being able to kind of just focus on one aquarium, put all the money into the equipment for that tank, and let all the corals grow big. So again, let me know in the comments down below. If you guys have any questions, send me a DM at my Instagram. Link is in the description below as well. But with all that being said, I will catch you on the next one. Peace out.